back to Serendipity Intended. Um, I have been a little all over the place lately, but I wanted to work today on a Christmas journal. So I have a box here that I'm going to use for my base. I have some printables here, some things I've recently cut out of a magazine, some magazine pages to use, and also just a bunch of papers. So So the first thing that I need to do is prepare the box to be a cover. And I used my scissors to cut off the little short pieces there, but then I decided that I would have a lot more control over my cutting if I went and used an X-Acto knife. So I went ahead and got that out, as well as a metal straight edge. And I used that to trim off all of the extra pieces that I didn't need, so that I would have nice, clean, straight cuts. I do like the control that using the X-Acto knife gives me. As you can see, it's also fairly easy to do. And so with that, I essentially had my cover and really could have used it just as is. But I decided that I wanted to make sure that the spine was really reinforced so that it would stand up to the bulk and everything that I was going to put inside. So I used this bookbinding tape on the inside to just reinforce the spine a little bit. It won't actually be visible, trimming off the edge. And if I were going to cover the front, I might have wrapped that around to the front side, but since I'm leaving the outside of the box as is, I decided that I needed to trim it off. And then using my bone folder to smooth that out, get it nice and even. And I realized I needed to trim that a little bit more than I had originally, at least on that top edge. And so now my spine just a little bit more reinforced. And so now to tackle the inside covers and make them look beautiful. So all kinds of choices here. And I really wanted to pick something that went nicely with the front cover, even though obviously you don't see them at the same time. But I did feel like the front inside cover and back cover, it's nice if they connect to the outside. And then the inside, I'm usually a little bit less concerned about. So what I typically do is take all of the papers that I have and just kind of audition them with what I'm trying to match. And you can see I got rid of a bunch of those pretty quickly. In the end, I decided that I had enough good choices and I would just choose from what I had. So I did like the red that was there, but then I decided that the other side wasn't going to really work. That one would have been better and it would have worked on the inside. So that was a possibility. I also really, really like this paper and I wanted it to work as well. So I ended up with 3 choices, but then ultimately decided that this one color-wise made the most sense with the front cover, and so that's what I was going to go with. So not one for measuring precisely, so I just used the cover and traced around it to know where to trim it off, and used my handy-dandy Fiskars trimmer to do that. I've had that trimmer for absolutely ever. and I love it. So then I decided that I was going to cut this off and not go all the way across. I'm not really sure why. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but I suppose I could have just glued down the whole paper and had a little bit of extra thickness, but I decided to do the 2 pages on the end and then glue them in. Now, originally I was going to just use the Uhu glue, and then I decided to go around the outside edges with my glitter glue just to make sure that they stayed stuck. Those are the parts that really tend to get the most use and the most wear and are the more likely to kind of come separated. So I did a little bit of extra glue on the outside edge and then again went back around on the other side with the glitter glue and then so that the whole page would stay stuck down, went ahead and used the Yoo-Hoo glue. I did realize after I glued this down that I had a tiny bit showing of the back cover, and I'll fix that later. It doesn't really show up too much in the video, but it doesn't quite cover the top. And you know what? That's okay. Noticed a little spot that was not glued down back and caught that quickly. So that glue on the back is really bugging me. And I did come back later on with a plastic eraser and erased and erased and erased and got most of the glue off. Then I decided that I wanted to use a little bit of fabric on the inside of the spine to cover up the bookbinding tape and kind of finish it off. So going through my fabric stash here, looking for some things that could potentially work. And again, just auditioning a few pieces to see what I have and what I like. I did toy briefly with, I liked the blue-gray of that fabric there, but in the end I decided it was a little bit too much pattern and not super Christmassy. So again, a few choices here, just auditioning the pieces that I had. I really do like the way that the gray ties in with the front cover. Again, liked the blue, but I was a little too busy. And I also like the brown. I guess it's more of a like a light tan, but ultimately I decided that the gray worked better with the cover. So I went ahead and did that. What was nice about this fabric is it's ribbed, and so I was able to follow along the ribbing in order to get a straight edge, which that doesn't always happen. And it also really nicely frayed, which was, and I tried tearing that because I thought the jagged end might be pretty, but that wasn't working. So I just went ahead and used my scissors and decided to keep the edge a little bit clean. I did end up leaving this a little bit longer than I had intended. On both ends, it sort of ended up hanging off the side, and I ended up leaving that. I'm sure it will kind of fray as I use it, and I'm okay with that. So then using some fabric tack, of course, to get it glued down. I definitely was fighting a bit with the glue here. It did not want to come out evenly and nicely at first. It always seems to work much better when I'm not trying to shoot a video than when I am. I ended up deciding that it might be easier for the center of the fabric to just put the glue directly onto the book spine and then smooth it out and let it adhere that way, rather than fighting with the fabric and the fuzzies to get it in. You can see I was really struggling to get the glue out. All right, so with that glued down, you can see it hangs over the edge a little bit. And like I said, I will probably go back after the fact and trim it off a bit, but I'm going to let it just be that way for a while and let it wear. And so then I had a bunch of pages to choose from that I wanted to use to include. And I did kind of want to think about, okay, well, what do I have and does it make sense with what I've got? And with some of the pages, I'm not really in love with the front side or the back side, but like in this case, I did love this image, so I just went ahead with it, knowing that the back was going to be a little weird. And then some other images, I'm absolutely in love with these mittens, and so definitely wanted to fold that. I'll probably keep the title from that page, little details, and then move on. And again, with this one, the back really wasn't doing it so much for me, but I liked the image, so I went ahead and kept it. I did trim off the extra white, because that wasn't. So I was fidgeting with this particular page and then decided that I really wanted to back it because there wasn't anything on the back side that I wanted to keep. I found this page, which was from an old planner, and decided that it would be really fun. It was basically the same size as the magazine from with a width perspective, and I kind of liked the idea of the spiral edges hanging over and definitely the tab from the planner pages hanging over. So I went ahead and put some glue on it and just glued it directly to the back, which makes the magazine page a little bit more sturdy, which I tend to prefer to do. And it also gave me a surface that was much more usable for writing, since I was using a planner page. The key with this, when you're doing two pages together, particularly if one of them is really lightweight like magazine page, is to make sure that you've got it nice and smooth before the glue dries. And then once I got everything glued down, then I went ahead and folded it and was able to add it to my stack. Now, with all of the other papers that I had, I needed to go through and figure out what I was going to use and what I wasn't going to use. And color was certainly important, so was size. I've sped this portion of the video up because it's just a lot of the same thing. So, for example, here I had two pages that were pretty much the same size that I wanted to join together so that I could use them folded. And I used some washi on the outside, and then you can see I'm trimming off some paper here to add to the inside to reinforce that edge. In my experience, washi doesn't hold up enough by itself to serve as a spine, so I went ahead and used the paper on the inside. And here I'm going through and just deciding which pages am I going to use and trimming some things off, folding them, I'm not necessarily worried in every single case about whether or not they're going to fit exactly. I'm mostly concerned about making sure that if I need to reinforce the edges, like with this one, this is fairly old paper and it's not really brittle, but I was concerned it would be too fragile to hold up to repeated opening and closing. So I went ahead and reinforced it with some other book pages. And then here doing the same exact thing. I really love this washi. It does not stay stuck very well at all. It would be fine on a flat page just as a decorative element, but on the spine I definitely needed to add some glue so that it would stay stuck. It wouldn't be a journal, especially not a Christmas journal, without music paper. And this one I kept the whole piece, thinking maybe I will use that extra fold as a pocket. And the same thing with that piece. Again, just going through, and I pulled this originally because it had gray in it, but I didn't like it. It was too stark, so I ended up discarding that particular piece. This was kind of a fun page. It's from a Stampington magazine, and I ended up getting two pieces out of that, one pretty much the same size as the journal and one a little bit smaller. This was a printable I had done last year. Definitely wanted to use that. Some other printables from previous years. I'm obsessed with that Santa Claus, and definitely will find a place for him. Now, these were packaging from, I don't even remember what, something that I was given. And so I decided to use those to make some pages as well. I thought they would be nice and sturdy. They're a little bit shiny, but I'll work with that. Definitely needed to bind them together though, so. And because of the thickness, I tried to leave just a little bit of space between these heavier pages so that they would fold closed a little bit easier. And I did reinforce both sides and kind of went through and did the same thing with all of them. Decided I didn't want to use just book pages to do that, so I also grabbed a little snippet of some Christmassy scrapbooking paper that I had to also use that to connect the pages together. What I like about this is that maybe to a smaller extent, those pages or sheets that you use to reinforce the seam between the two pages you're joining end up being well, they end up being a decorative element themselves. Now here I I put this here and glued it down, just not thinking about the fact that it was gonna not end up even. So I ended up, this page ended up being, this image ended up being a little bit lopsided in the final book, but you know, you live and you learn. So this particular piece of washi tape felt a little bit stickier, so I went ahead and didn't reinforce it with the glue. And then this piece of packaging here I thought would be really fun to keep as a pocket. So I played a little bit with what I could use in the background to make it pretty. And I really liked this green. I ended up deciding to go kind of upside down with it and did trim off a tiny bit so that it would definitely fit. And then just went ahead and glued it down. Now it wasn't quite long enough across the top, and again, I'm I'm really fine with that. I'm not going to worry about it too much. What I did realize was that I was going to glue over the edge of the pocket, which is not my finest moment. So I decided to use some wider washi tape to be that side because I decided that would be a little bit easier to just cut around and leave my pocket in place. Okay, then it was time to make all of these pages fit into the journal. And so top and bottom, then I realized I needed to trim off the end, and because it was way too wide, which of course then meant that I trimmed off the pocket. So a little bit of glue and that fixed that problem. And so I needed to do that process with all of the other pages to make sure that they weren't taller than the book or wider than the book. And so just kind of an assembly line thing to go through and make that happen. With all of the pages trimmed, it was time to make my signatures. I decided that I was going to have two in this journal. The spine is a little more than a half an inch, and that seemed like the right amount. So I decided to kind of sort them into sets, magazine pages together, the pages that were made from packaging together, my printables, and then just the sort of random pieces of paper. And then divided them into two piles, trying to spread things out so that they were fairly even, and having a little bit of, so you could see two magazine pages there, and then just kind of sticking things in places. So with my two piles in place, then kind of the play of figuring out what order I was going to put them in, and just kind of starting and putting them in and playing and rearranging them as I go. So that's my two signatures. I'm pretty happy with them. I think they work well and they're about the right thickness. I do still need to clean off the glue from the back, but on the whole, I think that I'm pretty much done. And I went ahead and I kind of grouped them together and made sure that they really were the right size. And then it was time to go ahead and bind everything together. Okay, so I went ahead and bound it. I didn't do that on camera because I'm really not very good at it, and I didn't think it would make for a good video. But it's bound, and so and I love how it feels in my hand. So I thought I'd do a really quick flip through of the journal and just kind of show you where it is at the beginning. So there's still some pages that aren't ready to be used, but that's part of the fun of kind of using the journal. So again, the cover from our Christmas Aplatki packaging from last year, and there. So just, some pages to write, some pages to glue things in, put some pictures in. This is really intended more for crafting, or less for crafting and more for just journaling and memory keeping. But anyway, that is my Christmas journal, and I can't wait to use it. Until then, make a great day.